I'd like to welcome you to Organizing Your Research with EndNote20. I'm Janice Masud-Paul, Librarian for Health Sciences Research. Okay, so this webinar will review some basic features in EndNote with an emphasis on what's changed from the previous version. For most of you, that's going to be EndNote20, as well as how to get the new version installed and configured on your PC or Mac. We'll also mention the differences between EndNote Online and EndNote Desktop, if time allows, how to get your library to cite and create references within Word, if we have time to do that. So in case you're not interested but familiar with EndNote, EndNote software helps you to organize citations you find in your research and to cite your references in Word in the style of your choice. It also makes it easier to use your references in other tools like NVivo. It comes in two flavors. There's the online version, also known as EndNote Web, and the desktop version called the Citation Manager, and we're going to be focusing on the Citation Manager today. The online version stores your information in the cloud. It's free, it's relatively intuitive, and it's a good choice for papers that don't have tons of references and attachments. The Citation Manager is stored on your desktop, as I mentioned earlier. It has more citation styles. It allows for almost unlimited references, 2 gigabytes of attachments, and it has greater functionality. Because it has more features than the online version, it has a slightly steeper learning curve, but like with most complex programs, you don't need to learn every bell and whistle in order to use it. Now, Drexel has a subscription to EndNote Desktop, so you can download it at no cost to you. If you leave Drexel, you can continue to use that version on your device, but if you change devices or the software goes through multiple upgrades after you leave, you may not be able to download the newest upgrade. It's a good idea to at least register for the online version so you can sync your desktop library to it if need be. So how do you get the desktop version EndNote20 on your computer? If you already have an earlier version of EndNote on your device, first make sure to do a compressed backup within EndNote. That's going to back up your libraries as well as the EndNote system files you need to run the library and any attached PDFs. That's information from your .data file, and I'll talk about that in a second. That way you can easily recreate your library if that becomes necessary. We're going to go live from here. We'll go to this library guide that will walk you through the process of getting EndNote20 on your desktop. So bear with me. Okay, let's see if I can pull it up. Here we go. Okay, so here is the library guide I was referring to. You can see it gives you some general information about EndNote, but also differences and features between earlier versions of EndNote and EndNote20. But here's what I want to point out, this getting started and how you download it to your desktop. For student computers and personally owned staff or faculty computers, you want to go to this Drexel IT Secure Software Server link and just follow the directions that are on the screen. They have links for folks that have Macs as well as folks that have Windows. For university-owned computers, if you have a Windows PC, you go to the Software Center for Windows. If you have a Mac, the self-service for Mac portal. And then there are also some links that you can use here that will link you to handouts for EndNote20 or some short 7-minute videos for using EndNote20 on Windows or a Mac. Scroll down past some of this other information, but I want to point out this information for configuring your preferences. especially if you're new to using EndNote. We've pretty much made it easy for you. All you need to do is cut and paste this information or this path in the appropriate fields within the EndNote preference area, and I'll show you where that is in a second. So let me show you how EndNote is going to look when you use it on your computer, whether or not you already have an EndNote library or you're new to EndNote. I'm going to click on this icon for my EndNote library. And this is showing you my already existing EndNote library. So let me close this out. For EndNote20, if you open EndNote, but you haven't opened the library yet, you see this screen. So this would allow you to open your already existing library if you've created one. But if you're new to EndNote and you haven't created the library yet, you can click on this shortcut. I'm not going to create a new EndNote library, but if this is your first time, you'll see that by default, it's going to ask you to create a library called My EndNote Library. I highly recommend that you create a library that's a little bit more descriptive than that, so you can name it anything that you want. A couple of things that are important to point out. When you first create your EndNote library, it's going to create a file that has a .enl extension, and I'll tell you why I'm letting you know about this in a moment. But EndNote actually has two components for all of their libraries, this .enl file, and if we scroll down, looking at mine, which is called EndNote for Training, if we scroll down, you'll see that there is a corresponding folder called EndNote for Trading.data. Think of these two files, the data file and the .enl file, as married. Okay, so if you move one to another folder, you've got to move the other to another folder. If you change the name, you need to change the name for both of them. If you change one without the other, they're not going to work. So just think of them as paired. The other thing to keep in mind is when you first install EndNote, install it on a local drive. All of us have OneDrive, but this is not where you want to put your EndNote folder. You don't want to put it in the cloud. Put it on a local drive. There's something about the syncing that happens in cloud folders and the like that can make your EndNote library unstable over time. So just put it on a local drive and everything will be fine. Now, once you have that information on your drive, you can go ahead and install it. I'm going to hit cancel here and open my existing library. I'm quite sure why that didn't work, but we'll try it here. Okay, so here's my EndNote for Training library. The first time you set up a library in EndNote, you first want to set your preferences. And we were talking about that a moment ago. If you have a Mac, you're going to see a menu item called EndNote. That's where you'll find your preferences. If you're using a Windows PC, it will be under Edit. And then once you get the preferences, the options will be exactly the same. There are lots of different preferences that you can set up in EndNote. I'm going to focus on two. The first one is Find Full Text. And this is what I pointed out to you when we were looking at that library guide. So as it says here, full text feature uses several technologies to maximize chances that EndNote will find all available PDFs that include PDFs that are open access as well as the ones from journals that Drexel subscribes to. I select or check off all of these boxes for finding my PDFs, but this is where you would enter the Drexel specific information. So the open URL path, as well as the URL for authentication. If we take a moment to go back to that guide, here it is here, we would just copy and paste that information in the appropriate fields as I mentioned earlier. So now let's go back to our EndNote folder. And here I've copied and pasted the appropriate information. I would click on apply and OK. And now I'm ready to start pulling references into EndNote and finding full text for those citations. And I'll show you how that works in a moment. The other preference that I wanted to show you is PDF handling. And this is optional, but I find it helpful. Often when you find a PDF for a citation, when you pull it into EndNote, it may have an odd name. So it may be named a series of numbers and letters, and it's not really clear what is reflected within that PDF. This allows you to automatically rename any PDFs that you download based on certain criteria. I'm an APA user, and so I tend to rename things based on the author's name and the year. However, that may not be enough information for me to discern one article or one PDF from another. So I'll also include the title information too. So I've selected that, and then I would click on apply and OK. Now, granted, that could make for a really long file name. However, EndNote limits the characters to 50. So they are pretty manageable, and it makes it a lot easier for me to find those PDFs. Let's close this out. Now I'm ready to start adding different references to my EndNote library. And for those of you who have used EndNote before, you may notice that it looks a little bit different. For the most part, that difference is cosmetic, but I'll point it out anyway. So there used to be in the previous versions of EndNotes a number of shortcuts to various tasks like import, export, find full text, and whatnot. Now, in this current version, that information is included in the top level menus. You may notice that there is a menu there, option there that wasn't there before called Library. So I'll select that so you can see it. Library has several options that are going to affect the function of your entire library. Things like syncing, like finding duplicate references, term list information, or moving fields. You may also be looking for options that you used to find under, let's say, edit, but it's been moved. So if you're looking for an option and you can't find it, more than likely it's either going to be in library or it's going to be in this tools option. That's where they've moved output styles, and that controls whether or not, let's say you're using APA or MLA or some other style, import filters and connection files. All those things used to be under edit, and now they're under tools. So if you can't find something you're looking for, I would check here. Briefly, I'm going to also mention this install EndNote Click browser extension. I think they just put this here for convenience, but EndNote Click helps you to find PDFs to open access articles and articles where Drexel might have a subscription. You still don't actually use EndNote Click within EndNote, you use it in your browser. But again, I think they put it here for convenience. And some of you may have used a tool called Copernio in the past. They just renamed that EndNote Click. So any questions about what I've mentioned so far? Okay. So in this left column over here is where you can organize your references. I've already imported some of them, and I have them arranged in various groups, as well as group sets. And group sets are just labels to help you organize your groups. I'm going to do a quick search and drag and search for those of you who haven't used EndNote before, so you can see how you would pull references into EndNote, and then we'll look at some of the differences in EndNote 20 for navigating or organizing those references. I'm going to go to drag and search, and this is the database that's right on our website. However, you can pull references from almost any database or even websites. Doesn't have to just be drag and search. Might look a little different when it comes to doing the export, but the underlying process is still the same. I'm going to do a quick search on groundwater. And fracking. And then I'll select a couple of articles to download into EndNote. So let's see, let me change this to article. Doesn't really matter. You can download all different types of formats into EndNote. And I'll just grab a few random ones. I'm going to put them into a folder by clicking on that little push pin. And then I will move them into EndNote. Okay, that's not available, but I'll grab it anyway. Okay, so I've got 4 articles, and I'm going to go to my folder where they're located and move all of them into EndNote. Now, again, this may look a little different depending on the database you're using, but most databases will allow you to move your information into some type of citation manager. In this case, they have EndNote Web, which will be the online version. So if I was using that and I wanted to move my references there, I would choose this one. However, I'm going to choose this other option for EndNote that also manages any files with RIS extensions. This would be good for not only EndNote, but Mendeley or Zotero or any other bibliographic citation management tool you're using. I want to click on that icon and then download. Because I'm using Firefox in this case, it's actually going to give me 2 options. The first option would allow me to open these libraries directly into my EndNote folder. And so this is probably the most efficient way to do it. However, not all browsers allow that. I think with Chrome, when you click on that box to import information, you have to save it to your device and then import it into EndNote. So I want to do the version that is that you're most likely to see and works in all browsers. So rather than opening it with EndNote here, I'm just going to save it. So we'll save our file to my desktop. I have a Windows desktop. And so it's going to save it in my download folder. Let's open my download folder. Here it is here. You can see it has an RIS extension. That's the one I'm looking for. So now if I go back to EndNote, I know where to look for it. I want to import those references that I just put in my download folder by going to File and Import. I'll click Choose and my download folder and pull them into this import file option. Make sure that you're using the right option. This is RIS, and that's what I want. There are a number of other ones here, and they're fine depending on the type of file you're using, but I want an RIS file, so that's the one I want. Now, when I click on Import, it will pull those 4 references into EndNote. And it's actually pulling them into 4 different places, or one place with a pointer from 4 different places. It pulled it into my All References folder, and that's where all of my references are from my library. Since these are references that I just imported, it pulled them here. This recently added folder will list all the references that I've added recently, but that is controlled by the user. So if I right click on this, you can see that it'll hold things for 24 hours. You may want to hold them there for longer than that, but I like that short length of time because I'm going to very quickly get rid of these and put them in a group. And then finally, there's my unfiled folder. So any references that I pulled into EndNote that I haven't placed in groups or group sets are going to live here until I deposit them in one of my groups. So I'm going to take these references and I'm going to create a group for them. I can do that by going to Groups, Create Group, and then just naming it. I'll name it Fracking. And then I want to grab all these unfiled references and drag them into my fracking group. So I'll just click on this to activate it and then click on Control A. You Mac people may have another series of keystrokes that you use, and I'll drag this into my fracking group. Right now, it's under sustainable food production, which is not the right group set for me. So I'm just going to drag this up to my groups set, and this is organized where I want it. If I wanted to create a group set for this, so let's say I was taking a course, some of the articles were about fracking. I knew I was going to be adding other articles on a different topic for a different assignment. I can create a group set for that as well. So I've just highlighted fracking. I'm going to go to groups and create a group set. I'll call that environmental science. So now I can drag my fracking group to my environmental science label. And I have all of my groups organized where I want them. Check the chat and make sure there aren't any questions. Okay. So if you have any questions, make sure you can post into the chat or you can just turn on your mic and ask. So let's take a look at how these references are organized, because again, it's a little bit different in version 20 than the earlier versions. I can't remember if we had more than 10 display options allowed at a time here, but you can see that you can add display options. If I right click, yes, I have the opportunity to add up to 10 for organizing my references. I can also click on a reference and that will give me the opportunity to see the summary of any of the references that I had listed here. Now you could certainly see the abstract in previous versions, but when you double clicked, it took you to a completely different page. This sort of allows you to see all of your references and any summaries at the same time. If I want sort of a preview of what my reference will look like in a certain publication style, I can do that by clicking on or selecting the reference and then clicking on the downward arrow that's listed here. Right now, I'm looking at an APA 7. I could change that if I wanted to, but when I click on this downward arrow, it shows me what it looks like in APA 7. If I click on this downward arrow now, you can see I could select other styles as well. This can be really helpful if you're not quite sure whether or not the reference you have is going to display well in your style. So for example, this isn't quite right for APA style. It's something that's not sentence case. Too many things are capitalized here. So if I wanted to, I could actually edit this directly in my library. I want to click on the edit option. And I could make this lowercase. I'm not going to make all the changes that I need to, but really the only things that should be capitalized here is the first word in the sentence and then the first word after the colon. So there's a lot of things that I would need to edit in order to have it display properly in my library, and more important, display properly when I use this word. But if I save this, when I actually use it in Word, it's going to show up properly. Also note that I could add any kind of attachment here. More than likely that will be a PDF, but you can also attach things like Excel files, Word files, and other types of files right here in your EndNote library. That way you can keep everything in one place. And if I wanted to attach a PDF, if I already had the PDF, I could click on Attach PDF, go to wherever I had it stored. I'm just going to select one of these arbitrarily, click on Open, and now the PDF is stored along with my references. And again, I could mark these up, make changes, and I could actually look for that information in my advanced search. So I could search across any notes that I made in my PDF or any references in my library by selecting search in any field with PDF notes. There's one more thing that I wanted to show you because I can see we're running a little short on time. This is only supposed to last for a half an hour. You can look for PDFs using the tool in EndNote, Find Full Text. So to do that, I'm going to want to select, see, let me change here, yes. I'm going to want to select the items in my library and then ask it to search for full text. If I go to References and click on Find Full Text, it will look across the internet for my references, selecting anything out there that's open access or that's part of the journals that we subscribe to. And you can see here that it's searching through those 4 references, found 2 URLs and a PDF. Anytime it finds a PDF, it will put a little paperclip next to that item. You can also go to where it found the URL. Now, this will take you typically to the publisher's site. If you look at, let's see, if you click on the URL here, it'll take you to the publisher's site. You can log in. Often they'll have a little icon here that will allow you to view the PDF. Okay, so here's full text. Let's see if that will bring it up for me. So it is opening the PDF. And I can go ahead and save this to EndNote so that it will be in my library along with the citations. Okay. Are there any questions that have come up so far? Because I'm seeing that I'm near the end of my half hour. That goes by pretty quickly. I don't see any in chat. Now, one of the things that I wanted to do was show you how you would use this in Word. And although we don't have time to do that, let me show you that in the handout that I have for this class. There are a couple of videos that will walk you through that process. So let me see if I can get back there to see. Yeah, so here it is here. This EndNote video citations, I believe that will walk you through that process. Let's see. I'm going to try to put this in the chat. And it's not allowing me to do that. Try one more time. I might be able to do it from the library guide. Let's just click on it. Okay, we'll do it this way. I'm going to put this in the chat. And there are actually a few different videos that will walk you through adding citations in Word and creating a bibliography. And even though these were originally designed for EndNote 9, because it's working with Word, there are no changes between EndNote 20 and EndNote 9. EndNote 9. The process is still the same. So let me throw that in the chat so you have a link to that in case you're not familiar with working with Word and EndNote. Okay. Hopefully you have that information. Let me drag that over.
Grammy does more than catch errors. With Grammy.
Okay, so are there any other questions? All right, if not, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And start my video. All right, so now that I'm not a disembodied voice, any questions or things that I didn't go over that you have questions about? If not, if any questions do come up, let me open the chat again. You can reach me at JHM52. Things that I didn't go over that you have questions about. If not, if any questions do come up, let me open the chat again. You can reach me at JHM52. If you have other questions about EndNote as you are using it. Okay, so thank you for joining us for this webinar. And that's it.